management, like Zoe said, a mouthful, but the whole point of our office is to aid in the transition for our new students coming in and for our Mountaineer families. We know that regardless of if this is your first student in college or your sixth student in college, that this time can be a transition for everyone, and it always feels a little bit different. So we want to highlight, like I said, our campus partners that do great work and help your student and you all through this process. So a couple of housekeeping things before we begin. We ask that you may see in the bottom of your screen that you utilize that Q&A feature to submit any questions that you may have throughout the duration of the webinar. Those will go to all of the hosts so we can see them. While Chris is presenting, Zoe and I will be in the Q&A box answering the questions that we have. And if there are some that are specific for Chris to answer, we have time at the end of the webinar set aside for him to answer some of those questions as well. So anything you have, please feel free to drop it in that Q&A feature. We do ask that you wait until Chris is finished speaking on a topic before dropping those questions in. He has a lot of information to share with you, which is great, and he probably will cover some of the things that folks may have questions about. And we also recognize that counseling and psychological services may spark personal questions regarding your student. If that's the case and you have something that is very, very specific, we do ask that you reach out to counseling. We'll provide all of their information directly, or have your student reach out to them directly, just to make sure that we're protecting your student and their rights to their information and making sure that they can advocate for themselves and ask some of these questions as well. But if you have things that are a little more generalized, please feel free to drop them in. And again, if we don't have time to get to all of the questions, or if there's anything that's still outstanding, we'll be sure to send those over and get you some answers soon in the next couple of days. So we will be recording this presentation, and it will be posted again on Campus ESP, our parent portal. So if you miss anything, or you're like, I don't have time to take notes, but this information is important to me, we will certainly make sure that you have access to those. And if you need anything for any reason, you can always email us at families@appstate.edu. And if you still have questions after the session that are counseling and psychological services specific, you can also reach out to their office. Zoe's going to drop their email in the chat. Similarly to everything else at App State, it is whatever the thing is at appstate.edu. So their email is counseling@appstate.edu, and they'll be able to follow up with you personally. So now that that's all done, I'm going to pass it back to Chris to begin the presentation on counseling and psychological services.
Okay, thank you very much. And I am going to share my screen to be able to share some slides and talk a little bit about what I will be presenting. Here we go. Well, again, welcome everyone. I'm Chris Hogan, a psychologist, as I mentioned, and director of the Counseling and Psychological Services Center. I've been at App State for almost 25 years in a variety of different roles within the Counseling Center, and for almost the last 11 years as serving as director of the Counseling Center. So again, I'm really happy to be here with you tonight. Hopefully be able to share lots of good information. And so just a quick overview about what we'll be talking about tonight. Is that I'll describe some of our services, our counseling center and our services, talk about some of the top concerns that students bring to us here in the counseling center, as well as some of the impacts of counseling that we see in the counseling center. Provide some tips for you to be able to encourage your student if you think it might be helpful for them to connect with the counseling center. We have a lot of different ways to connect with us, and so offering some tips for how you might be able to help them to engage with us. I also want to share a little bit about our website. I think we have some really good resources, and I just want to walk through a couple of those on our website and show you how to access those, because I think that could be helpful as well, and then answer any questions that you might have as well. Okay. All right, so about the Counseling Center, we're located on the first floor of the Miles Annis Student Support Building, which is the same building as the App State Post Office. We're on the first floor. We're on the side of the building that's opposite the post office. So on Howard Street, right across from the College of Education is our entrance, right near those doors. And we are staffed by licensed psychologists, counselors, social workers, marriage and family therapists. We also have a training program that we recruit nationally for our doctoral interns. They are in their last year before they become psychologists, and so they work full time for us. We have doctoral and master's practicum students. App State has four different graduate programs for mental health, a clinical PsyD program, a counselor program, master's in social work, and a marriage and family therapist program. And so we utilize some of the graduate students and they apply, and we're pretty selective about who works at the counseling center, but they're involved with some of the work that we do. And then, of course, we have some great support staff who, if you've called, you may have interacted with some of them, but they're great at being able to answer questions and even assist you kind of getting connected with other resources at App State. I want to talk for just a few minutes. I'm going to give you a little bit of a overview of our services, and then we'll circle back and go a little bit deeper with some of these when I show you our website and walk you through some of the features of our website. But our initial consultation is the main entry point for students who are interested or think that they might be interested in some of the services that we offer, counseling services like individual counseling or group counseling. And so students can schedule an appointment for our initial consultations either online. They can stop into the counseling center and schedule, or they can call and schedule. So that's an example of we really try to meet students at whatever point they're at to try to help them access our services. And then once they schedule, usually students have that initial consultation appointment within 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it could be if they contacted us in the morning, we did appointments in the afternoon. So sometimes it could still be the same day, but usually 1 to 3 days is pretty typical for students to have that initial consultation appointment. And those appointments are the student will fill out some information ahead of time through our portal. And then we mostly conduct those by phone, but we also do some, we would be happy to meet with students in person. Those are usually about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and they talk with a counselor. We get an idea about what might be going on for them, and then talk about different options that might best match up with what they want and with what they need. And so that could be services within the counseling center, it could be services in our community, it could be other resources at App State that could meet some of their needs. And then we have short-term individual therapy. And when we think about individual therapy, we're often thinking about students that they're identifying maybe 2 or 3 goals that they really want to work on, and that most of our appointments for individual therapy occur every other week. And then students use about an average of about 5 sessions of individual therapy, some a little bit less, some a little bit more. But that gives some idea about sort of the scope of what most students are looking for with short-term individual therapy. I'll talk in a minute, or I can talk right now actually. If students want something maybe more frequent, we have students who maybe in high school they met with a counselor weekly and they did that for a couple of years, and that was really helpful for them. We can help them get connected with a counselor in the community, and we have a referral coordinator that can assist students to be able to connect with a counselor in the community. And then we also, if students maybe knew they wanted services in the community or a provider in the community, and they didn't even necessarily want to come into the counseling center, they can access something called Thriving Campus on our website, and I will show you a little bit more about that. So referral coordination is an option. We can help assist students with that. We also have several groups that happen throughout the semester, and some groups students can join right away, and they're more short-term 3 to 4 session groups. One example of that is our Coping Skills Toolbox group, often for students who are dealing with anxiety or stress. We also have Understanding Self and Others groups, which are general groups. Students can come in and talk about anything that they may want to talk about. Average number of students in our groups is usually 6 to 8 students with 1 or 2 counselors. And it's the same students in the group each week. And so they really get to know the others in the group and get support from their peers. And so groups like our Understanding Self and Others group may get started sometime toward the middle of the semester and then go throughout the rest of the semester and meet weekly. Uh, I mentioned our referral coordination, our emergency services. So for students who might be experiencing something like recent suicidal thoughts or recent sexual assault, they may have experienced the death or loss of a loved one, it's more urgent that they meet with a counselor. Students can walk into our counseling center, come into our counseling center, and just Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, when we're during our business hours, and just let our front desk know that it's urgent, it's an emergency, that they'd like to talk with a counselor, and we'll have them meet with a counselor as soon as possible. And then after hours or on weekends or on holidays, students can call our counseling center number, and they will get our voicemail, but it tells them which button to press to be connected directly with the counselor on call. So that's available, as I mentioned, after hours at night, 2 o'clock in the morning, on the weekends, on holidays, so students can access that. We have an eating concerns treatment team. So we have, if students are dealing with an eating concern, uh, we use a comprehensive model with that. So students might see a counselor, maybe in the counseling center, sometimes maybe in the community. They'll meet with our coordinator for eating concerns treatment team, who also will connect them with student health services, which is a floor above us, just to monitor physical health or help them with physical health symptoms. And then there's also a registered dietitian in our wellness and prevention services, which is on the first floor in the other side of our building. And so that we coordinate services and provide comprehensive treatment for eating concerns. We do consultations with parents, faculty, and staff. And so, for example, if you as a parent or a family member, you're concerned about your student, you're not sure how to best help them, you are welcome to call us and let our front desk know that you have a question, that you want to talk with a counselor about a concern from one of your students. And we'll try to be available. If we're not, we'll call you back and we'll talk you through whatever kind of situation or resources that could be helpful. And we do that with faculty as well, who might be concerned about a student in their class, staff members, residence life and housing. So we really try to connect across campus to provide support to those who might have direct connections with students. Similarly, we do a lot of outreach. We want to get outside of the walls of the counseling center. And so we have several programs ongoing, something called Weekly Refresh, where this semester that is on Wednesdays, and students, we have a variety of different programs that we offer in the afternoons, things like coping skills toolbox, where students can come and build their own coping skills toolbox, learn other stress management techniques, coping skills. Aromatherapy is a very popular one where students can get demonstrated and take home some different aromatherapy scents that is helpful for relaxation and other things. So that's one of our popular ones too with our weekly refresh. Creative coping happens on Tuesdays this semester in the afternoon, and that's art therapy, a drop-in art therapy space with a counselor, and really also there's no sign up or ongoing counseling required, but it's just a drop-in space to be able to offer coping strategies. Sometimes I know that our counselor who runs that creative coping also just is able to answer some questions and help students navigate some other concerns that they might be having. So that's a really good space. Our mental health ambassadors is a peer group, mostly undergraduates that work with us, and they will offer programs on different mental health topics, often to clubs and organizations, sometimes also doing a tabling to help students know about our services. And then we have Let's Talk, which is 4 days a week this semester. One of our counselors is in a space outside of the counseling center. I'll show you a little bit more about that when we go to our website. But students can drop in 3 of the days. It's in the Student Union. One day it's in D.D. Doherty Hall, where advising is located, same building. And students can just drop in. It's geared toward students who just may have a problem that they want to talk through. They're not maybe interested in ongoing counseling, or maybe they're a student who has never had counseling and is just not even sure what it would be like to talk with a counselor. And so it's a way to just have a conversation, a 15 or 20-minute conversation, maybe get some questions answered. And that's a great avenue too for students to kind of test out the waters and th see, do I really want to approach counseling, or maybe is that something that I need at this point? And I'll show you a little bit more about Let's Talk, and share a little bit more about that. And well, I mentioned that we have a training program, and that all of our services, there's no charge for any of our services. I know sometimes people think after a certain number of sessions they have to pay a certain fee. That's not how we operate. All of our services are free. They don't have a charge to them. And our services, our counseling services, like individual therapy, initial consultations, group therapy, referral coordination within the counseling center, they are confidential. If a student is 18 years old or over, they're considered an adult, and everything that they talk about is confidential, with some exceptions. And we talk with students about the different exceptions. As you might imagine, if someone was in serious danger to themselves or someone else, and we couldn't plan for safety, then we'll let students know that ahead of time that we might need to share information to make sure people are safe. If we learn of a child being abused or neglected, or a dependent adult being abused or neglected, those are other situations where we're required by law to report suspected abuse. So those are a few situations, but generally everything that the student talks about stays with us in the counseling center. And that's often really reassuring to students, um, to know that they can come in and they can talk about really anything, and things that they may have been carrying for a number of years. We see students who just, unfortunate things happened to them sometimes many years ago, and they just needed a space to be able to talk through some things and figure out what directions they wanted to head, and maybe build some other skills for managing some of that. So, confidentiality is really helpful for our students. Um, why do students come to the counseling center? Anxiety and stress. I would say maybe 8 or 9 years ago, it used to always be depression was our top concern, but a while ago, anxiety and stress became the number one concern, and it's really pretty overwhelming. When I just looked at the numbers recently from last year, about 80% of our students who come into the counseling center are identifying anxiety, stress as one of their the top concern, or one of their top concerns. Depression, personal growth, students are looking to just understand themselves in a different way. We know many students who might be coming 18, 19, 20 years old, and they, are just understanding themselves, figuring out what they're wanting from relationships or career or other things. And relationships with others is a really top concern. And that's broadly speaking, it could be relationship concerns with a significant other, a friend, a roommate, a family member. So that's a very big top concern that students bring. Sleep difficulties, self-confidence is a big one. Traumatic or difficult experiences, academic concerns, eating concerns. Those are all some of our top reasons. But we see students for all different types of reasons, and we often will tell students we'd rather have you come in early when things are maybe just a little bit of a concern, because those are usually easier to address than waiting until something kind of snowballs and becomes a bigger concern. Just wanted to mention the impacts of counseling. We pay attention to this within our counseling center. We know that the research is very strong around counseling, and within our center as well. We see center-wide decreases in the measures that we have for depression, anxiety, distress, other measures like that. But also our students, when they're finishing treatment, or when they're at their fifth session, for example, some of this is from that fifth session. If they are getting close to being done, 96% of the students say they have more coping skills as a result of counseling. 62% believe counseling center services contributed to them remaining at App State. 57% believe counseling center services contributed to improvement academic performance. And 54% believe that the counseling center contributed to them becoming more involved at App State. And those are things, just mentioned that last one, that we know being involved is really important. Sometimes it's easy for people to get more isolated. Social anxiety is something that has grown a lot since COVID. And so really helping students connect. Part of what we do is it's not just counseling, but it's what can we help students connect with across campus that will just help their overall well-being. And so we are listening for that. And sometimes that includes being able to have them circle back to their family members and their parents, and they may be worried about things that have happened at home, and so we often will be encouraging them to have conversations back with their parents, for example, or ask questions to better understand something that they may have experienced at home. So we're involving really as many resources as possible to help support our students at App. And Parents often want to know, or family members want to know, I think counseling would be helpful for my student. How can I help them? They seem to be reluctant. And so, mentioning just a few things here that could be helpful. I'll show you in a minute about our free online screenings that are available on our website. Sometimes our students might say, I might be depressed. I'm really not sure. I don't know if it's really worth going and getting counseling for what I'm experiencing. And so, for example, they can go and they can do an online screening on our website. They're free, they're anonymous. They can take that screening and get feedback that's anonymous, and it'll have recommendations for them. So things like could be depression, anxiety, eating concerns, substance use, just overall well-being. Those are different screenings that students can take. So we might encourage that. I mentioned Let's Talk, and again, I'll show you a little bit of that on our website. But there's no commitment to going to Let's Talk. It just is a drop-in, no appointment required. Talk to a counselor, and just we have a lot of students that pop in and just say, "This is what I'm dealing with. I'm not sure if counseling is something that could be helpful." And so we will talk with them and give them our perspectives. Also, I think it's helpful for students to know that initial consultations are brief, so 20 to 25 minutes, and that there's no obligation beyond that meeting. So sometimes we encourage people, faculty and parents, just to let students know you can just do the initial consultation and just say, that's all I need, or I'm going to think about anything more. There's no obligation. What we see is that a lot of times students who might be reluctant to talk in counseling, they come and they say, I don't think I'm going to say very much. And then they are surprised at how much they may talk about even within that 20 minutes of an initial consultation. And then it helps them see, oh, this actually was helpful to be able to talk about this, and it's not as scary as I thought it would be. So sometimes just getting them through the door can be really helpful. Um, and then again, reminding them that counseling, initial consultation, other things in the counseling center are free, they're confidential. And then again, it's easy to schedule an initial consultation, and I'll show you that here in a minute online, um, or they can call or they can stop in. All right, I am going to exit out of this and just go directly here. I'm gonna stop sharing. And I am going to jump over to our website. And that our website is counseling.appstate.edu. And one of the things that you will see on our website is our several buttons. And I'm going to run through some of these, some quicker than others, but our services gives you an overview of our different services. And if you were to click on any of the menu on the right, you'll learn a little bit more about individual counseling. You'll see the different groups that we have, learn about our referral services and things like that. So that is our different services. Many of them I just spoke about. Emergency page I also talked about, but just as a reminder, if you need to know what to do, emergencies during the day, there's some information. Emergencies after hours are there as well. We have at the bottom other options. Oops, sorry about that. But other options too. We want students to be able to connect with whatever is going to feel most comfortable for them. And if it's not the counseling center, there's also locally, there's a local mental health. Daymark offers a mobile crisis line, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. There's a sexual assault helpline, Oasis, which is a local provider. There's the Trevor Project. So there's a lot of different options. And at the top of the page as well, too, North Carolina offers, if you were to click on Solutions North Carolina, you can do a search by county. So if students it's over the summer and they're in another part of North Carolina, they can also look on our website and find resources that might be closer by to them. So those are emergency services. How to help, I just wanted to point out that I've shared a little bit about how parents might be helpful, but there is more information here if you were to click on parents on the how to help. There's other suggestions and advice for being able to deal with different concerns that a student might bring to you. Getting started is about our initial consultations. So that's how students get started. There's a little bit of information there, and then there is the online scheduling system. So if students were to click on that, then it will take them through and get information about them as a student, and they will be able to see available appointments and be able to schedule online. And again, as I mentioned, students can call or stop in to be able to schedule that initial consultation. The self-help and free screenings, which I mentioned, that's on this button. And there's lots of great resources. Again, these are free, the online screenings. If we were to click complete a screening, that will take you to the screening page, and you can see some of uh, the different options that students can choose. So just from everything from checking in on their well-being, being concerned about a traumatic event or gambling, anxiety, panic attacks. There's a lot of different options that students can choose. And then also, two students might already have identified a concern for themselves, or they want to learn more about that concern. They may not want counseling, and that's okay. They can start. We have a lot of different self-help resources. Anxiety and panic is one of our top concerns that I mentioned for students. And so students or others can go and you can click on any of these resources that we have that students can get more information about all these different topics here. And then I mentioned our outreach that we do, um, the prevention outreach programming, and students. I'll mention just one other piece to this is that students, if they're involved with a club or organization, sometimes they think this would be really helpful to have this information for our club or organization. And so students can request, there's a outreach program request form, and students can request an outreach, and either depending on the topic, either one of our counseling center staff will try to meet that need, or we also have our mental health ambassadors, which are our trained undergraduates that may do that as well. And we know that oftentimes peers are receptive to the information from their peers. And then Thriving Campus, if a student is maybe knows that already that they're interested in services provider off campus, if you were to click on Thriving Campus, it will take you to appstate.thrivingcampus.com. If you were to click in person, and then um, Boone, North Carolina, then some reason, there we go. And so it will bring up people in person who are close to campus. And as an example two, you can do a filtered search. So students could do a filtered search for insurances, specialty areas that a counselor might have, the gender of the counselor, religion, any of the different types of provider types. So you can do a filtered search, which will bring you a list of counselors. I'll show you one counselor. These are our referral coordinator keeps in touch with all of our folks who are on our list here. We'll just click on Ida, but you can see this person is accepting clients, and it tells you a little bit more about this person, the insurances they take. So you could also just look through and their location. One of the ways that our referral coordinator, well, you can do a search that looks at location, maybe if it's something that's close by campus. But our referral coordinator is also very helpful with helping students think about how close do they need to be to campus. Do they need to be on the Apple Cart route? Do they need to be within walking distance and things like that? So we'll help with all that. But Thriving Campus is a really helpful resource. I hope you're able to see that. I realized hopefully I didn't have to jump out of that. But Let's Talk is the last piece that I'll mention, and I had shared that earlier, that if you were to go, you could see the days of the week and the locations where we are outside of the counseling center. We also are on the Hickory campus Thursdays at 10. Talks a little bit about what Let's Talk is, and then it shows you our Let's Talk counselors and a little bit about each of them. So if students wanted to, they had a few options and they thought this person looks like nice. I could probably go talk to this person. So again, we just want to make things accessible and easy for students to get the assistance that they might need. So that is, I think, the gist of our Counseling Center website. I just want to mention too, just in helping students to know, is it okay to come to the Counseling Center? We see over 1,800 students a year at the Counseling Center, and it's actually broken down pretty evenly by their year in school. So freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, or fifth years, they're all senior, fifth year, they're all pretty much evenly divided. So we see students across all groups of students. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to, I guess, pop back to my slides here really quickly. All right. I don't know. I guess we're at the questions part. I could take my slides down, and that way we can see Zoe and Haley too. Okay.
Okay. Well, for everybody that is watching right now, if you guys do have questions, you guys can start putting them into the Q&A if you haven't already. Right now, we do just have one, Chris, that I think would be pretty valuable to talk aloud to folks. Someone asked if a student has outside counseling, can they still participate in an anxiety group on campus?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. Yes. So usually what we do, we just want to be clear with different providers about what students are involved with. So if a student is interested in any of our groups, I think that's a great example. So a lot of times our groups can provide support for students who might already have a provider. When the students come in, will do initial consultation. We'll talk with them. They'll just sign a release so that we can communicate with their individual counselor. That's often the case, and just make sure that that person's on board with the plan and that we can communicate back with them if there's any concerns or just to coordinate support for the student. So yes, that's a great question.
Fabulous. It looks like that was the only question we had left in the chat. So that's all good.
Okay.
However, folks, thank you for being here. If you do have questions and you either didn't type them in or you're like, this is going to need a little bit more time, we're going to drop some information in the chat. Thank you, Zoe, for doing that. Again, thank you for your engagement, for joining us today. If you have questions that were not answered, please do email them to counseling@appstate.edu, and their team will be able to follow up with you personally. Zoe just dropped that in the chat in case you want to copy and paste and save that for later. And again, I know we mentioned this at the beginning, but this webinar will be uploaded next week to the Campus CSP parent portal. In case you need to reference it later, go back and look at any of the slides that Chris reviewed or figure out where you need to go to get something on the website. So thank you for joining us and have a great rest of your evening.